Hi everyone, Comic Book Reviewer here. This time reviewing on the 1987 film Masters of the Universe. Now, as you know, Masters of the Universe was a 1987 superhero film based on the Masters of the Universe toy line by Mattel, and of course was meant to have Dolph Lundgren in the role of He-Man in his own sort of feature-length film. And keep in mind that, yeah, due to so many negative reviews and now being sort of regarded as a cult film, the best I can say for Masters of the Universe, it's doing what other versions of other He-Man media had done, telling a different alternative version to the He-Man mythos and doing something completely different. So the premise of the film is meant to feature on the planet of Eternia how the warlord Skeletor sees control of Castle Grayskull and pretty much has conquered all of Eternia. We see how He-Man, Teela, and Man-at-Arms get the help from mainly Gwyndol, who mainly has a special device that Skeletor is after. And after escaping Skeletor's forces, we see how they end up on Earth, have to find a certain device back, but also get the help from not only a guy called Kevin, but also Julie Winston. And the whole point of the film is obviously meant to have Julie and Kevin being roped into He-Man, Teela, Man-at-Arms, and even Gwyndol's sort of mess from basically Skeletor's conquest. And I think the film is an interesting idea. Like, it is doing something completely different with He-Man, and it's heavily implied that obviously He-Man is not supposed to be Prince Adam, but someone who's been given the title by the Sorceress. And there have been different alternative versions to He-Man's origin, like obviously the Sorceress being a completely different character, and obviously there have been times in other He-Man media where there have been different takes of his origin, like obviously He-Man being this guy who was given armor and that by the Sorceress, basically having a more technology-themed world, and obviously the New Adventures of He-Man taking place on Primus, so obviously being completely different. And I think they also do make it clear in this version, Skeletor is meant to be completely different. He isn't meant to be this sort of more slapstick villain, except someone who's a bit more menacing. I can see where the Kevin Smith He-Man reboot was obviously trying to go completely different with Skeletor and doing something completely different with his character, because when he does gain He-Man's sword, he goes with this more bigger, buff, but more menacing feel. But here, it's just giving him some special themed armor to match He-Man's. And it's also clear that obviously they had to sort of replace Orko with a different character for Gwyndol, someone who was meant to be a bit more of a comical character, but someone who obviously has moments to show some sympathy and redemption. And I think it's also clear that they couldn't really cram in all of Skeletor's forces, so had to go with some different characters, like Blade, Shroud, as well as Kragg. So the only two characters from Skeletor's forces that were used were Beastman and Evil-Lynx, so it makes complete sense. I know that originally there was meant to be a sequel, which clearly didn't happen. And I think it's clear the film just ends it there, but leaving the message that He-Man and Skeletor's battle will and can continue. And I think it's clear that this film was done to help promote the Masters of the Universe toy line, and because of the growing popularity of He-Man, of course, obviously doing a sort of tie-in movie would make complete sense. It's doing something new. something completely different. And it's also clear that obviously this version of He-Man isn't supposed to be Prince Adam, but a completely different character, so it kind of makes sense. I think my best thoughts for Masters of the Universe, it's there to be a campy 80s over-the-top movie, going with an actor who was in that iconic movie, going for someone who needs to be this sort of over-the-top villain, someone who's obviously there to kind of be these sort of characters who are just there, roped into the main hero storyline. So my best thoughts with Masters of the Universe, it's an okay film, it obviously knew what it needed to do, and had to be something completely different, despite relying on its own original story. So, it definitely deserves thumbs in the middle. Kind of alright, kind of okay, just there to help promote more He-Man stuff, the same with other movie tie-in properties. So, Comic Book Viewer here, signing out.